So today's week 8. I may have mentioned this in our last class. I apologize for the inconsistent quality of the audio on some of the screencasts. There seems to be an issue with the microphone driver on my machine. I've tried updating it. I've tried doing everything I can do to fix it, but I'm sort of stuck with it. So I know the audio is a bit choppy at times. There's not much I can do unless I can send my machine in for repair, unfortunately. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to open up our project from last week and kick it off. And we'll fix the things that needed to be fixed and then go ahead and continue working with authentication. I managed to break it last week because I set the brackets where I shouldn't have had them. Oh, sorry, in the wrong folder. So the issue we were having last week was on our login view. And I think the way I left it off, it was crashing because I had left the code this way. We had added this section at the top that said, if we have a messages variable, show this red banner that said invalid login, and otherwise show this blue banner above our form that said, please enter your credentials. And the problem was we got this. This is basically how we left things off last week. And the issue is in here on line 3, in my handlebars if statement, I had mistakenly put my condition in brackets. Those round brackets need to come out. This is why we're getting this error in our view. I shouldn't have those brackets here. So without the round brackets, I now get a blue banner with this instruction. And if I put in a login that's not valid, so you have the brackets and yours works. And what does your error say? Okay, so let's go look at the method in the controller as well. I commented some stuff out to try and fix it, Blair, so you may have commented it out as well and just have to re-enable it. So in your index.js in the controller, I think I commented some stuff out to try and get it to work. So this code should work. So we're creating a messages variable. We're setting it equal to the session messages or an empty array. We clear out the session variable, and then we need to pass it to the view. So you may be missing this part. It's exactly the same as that. Okay, just double check. I'll leave the method up for a minute. But it says messages is not defined. So in your res.render, you've got a messages variable here. In this command, when you're rendering the login view, you've got a variable called messages that's being passed. And yet it still says messages is not defined. I'll have to come and look at it. The other thing to check for a clue may be if there's anything else indicated in your terminal. Okay, but there's no other error trace? Okay, I'll look at it in a bit. So we should not have round brackets around our conditions. And our if statements in HBS syntax, they don't work the same way as other if statements. Basically, all we can check with this if is whether a variable is null or has a value. We can't, for example, do a comparison, like if X equals Y, or this is greater than that. It's not, the ifs, the built-in ifs in handlebars is much simpler than that. All it can check is whether something has a value or is null. So in this case, when messages is null, sorry, when messages isn't null, we're showing an error in red. When messages is null, we're showing an instruction in blue. Now we should probably also add a way to log out. Right now, the only way to log out is stop the server or close the browser because Passport is using sessions. We configured sessions when we set up Passport last week. In our app.js, we used Passport to initialize sessions, so it is storing users using the session object. So if I close my browser and open it back up, that will also log me out. But as long as my browser tab's open, that session of my login is going to persist. So I can log in now. And I know I'm logged in because on this page, I've got my links. I can add I can load this page in another window. As an anonymous user, I get a read-only. Well, sorry, I guess I don't totally get a read-only view. I think we hid the I hid the create link, but we should also modify the these so that an anonymous user doesn't see them as links. They just see the plain text name, and this delete column shouldn't even be visible to me when I'm anonymous. So this is on our foods index view. So I'm going to go open that up under views and foods, under index. So we added this if statement here. We wrapped our add a new food in this if. If we have a user, we'll show that. So we're going to need similar logic on our first column and our third column of our table. And there's a few different ways we could write the logic. I'm just going to use a simple if-else. If the user object exists, we'll show this link. Otherwise, we're just going to print the food name as static HTML text without an anchor tag. I'm going to move the edit link that we had inside of that condition. And if we don't have a user, we're still going to print the name of the food, but it's going to be static. The user can't click on it or interact with it. So if I refresh in my two browsers, I won't see a change in Firefox where I'm authenticated. I should still have a bunch of links in the first column, but in my other browser in Chrome where I'm an anonymous user, the name of the food will now just be static text. I'll just try this out. So in Firefox, I'm logged in. I may have to log in again, hang on. Well, that's interesting. No. When I have a user account, I should see the add link and the edit links. That's not what I'm going for. Let's just see if we get the same result here. I'm going to move that whole delete column also inside. I want to see whether our delete shows up or not. Oh, I think I know what the problem is. I think I have to do this. Okay. I think in order to check our user variable, because we're inside of our loop, we're looping through the foods, we're trying to refer to a user variable that's outside of this loop. It's declared above. We need this. Yeah, that's why. I'll go over that again. So now we have the right result. As an anonymous user, all I see are the two columns. I can also get rid of this third column heading. As an authenticated user, I have all the links available. So up here, we're not inside of any code block, so we can access that user variable. The user variable is passed. We go to our foods controller. Here's our index view. Don't worry about, I'll put the code back up. So on our index view, we are passing the request user. So when somebody's logged in, we have a user object. When they're anonymous, this object is null. There is no user. So in our, so we can reference it directly here because we're not inside of another block of server-side code. Down here, we're inside, we're looping through that foods object. So we have to go up a level because foods and user are declared at the same level. here. So once we're inside foods, we can't see the user variable. So I had to use this prefix to go up one level. User does not exist inside of foods. User is declared at the same scope level as foods. And I'll want to do the same thing with this last TH. In this case, we're outside of the foods variable. So I don't need that slash in front of it. So now that third TH tag will only be visible when the user's logged in. So it looks fine here. It should clean up these lines over here. And now my table extends all the way. So this is how we can check in an individual view with HBS whether the user is authenticated or not, and we can determine what to show, what to hide, depending on whether they've logged in or whether they're anonymous. This still doesn't prevent access, though. So this page we're making public regardless. Anybody can come to this page. It's just a question of what can they see and do when they get here. Authenticated users can see and do more than anonymous users can do. However, as an anonymous user, I could still do this. So for example, even though I'm not logged in, if I have this URL, for example, in my browser history, there's nothing preventing me from getting to this page. It's still public. I may not see the link to get here, but if I have the link, I can go here. There's nothing preventing me from saving a change as an anonymous user. So we actually need to control access to the edit. Basically, the add, the edit, and the delete, all of those methods, we should make sure the user's logged in. So it's fairly simple, not quite as easy as it would be in an ASP.NET controller, where you can just put the word authorize at the top and everything works great. So what we'll do is we'll write a simple method in our food controller that will check if the user is logged in or not. And then we'll call that method whenever add, edit, or delete are called. We'll make sure that the user's logged in first. Does anybody still need to see this, the HBS here? So I'm going to open up, go back to my food controller. And I'll actually put this method right at the top. We'll just write a simple function that we can call before add, edit, or delete. And this will check the request object. In Express, the request object has a built-in method called isAuthenticated. That'll return a true or false. So we're just going to use that built-in method. So if our request is authenticated, This is where we haven't actually used this parameter before. We've been writing it in all our methods, but we've only ever used request and response. Next means just do the next thing in the stack. So we'll just call next. And next is a method. I think this is the first time in my life I've written this function and actually remembered the brackets at the end of it. So next just says go on to the next event. What should happen? So this is what happens if request.isAuthenticated returns true. What should we do if we check the user and they're not logged in, but they're trying to access one of those pages we want to be private? Yeah, let's just send the login. In this case, user is anonymous. Direct the login. So this will then run the get method at login, which will take them to our login form. So now we want to call this method in front of most of the other methods in our controller. We don't need it in index because our index page is public. Anybody can see it. But we have two methods for add, a get and a post, two methods for edit, a get and a post, and we also have a delete method. So every one of those methods should call, whoops, and I'm missing. Right, I don't need the arrow because, yes, thank you. I've been written a plain JavaScript function in a while. So used to writing them as anonymous functions. So we're going to leave this one alone. It says our get. But when we have our get add, so this will load our form so the user could add a new food. So before this code runs, we want to call is authenticated. So right here, you can insert this call to another method. So we're basically interrupting when we have a get request at food/add, before we start looking at the request, we're going to go and call is authenticated first. If the request is authenticated, next just says, okay, carry on to the next part of your method. So if we save this and now I go to a browser where I'm anonymous, if I try food/add, is authenticated check runs, says nope, you're not logged in Chrome, redirect to the login screen. If I go to Firefox, I have to log in again. But once I've logged in, may need those, let's check. Oh, oops. Okay, so I got my brackets right here. This has to be, we have to say return next. But saying return, my method continues on and runs our redirect to login. I missed the word return here. I think that should fix our problem. Right. So we want to add this call to is authenticated in front of the 4 other methods. We've got our add post, our edit get and post, and our delete. Each one of them, before we start interpreting the HTTP request, we want to do our authentication check on each one. Why do I need to put it on post? If I can't load the form, if I'm not logged in, why do we also want it on the add post method? How could somebody possibly call this post method if they can't load the form? Absolutely, you could use Postman, or I could just build my own form and set the action equal to ryansdomain.com/food/ad and send whatever I wanted. So let's call is authenticated. In the post, in the add post method, in delete, as well as inside our 2 edit methods. So now all of these methods are private. The only way to access them is to be logged into our site. We can no longer use something like Postman, use our own form, and submit data to get any of these methods to run. You've got to be logged in. So if I go back here now, edit as an anonymous user, this takes me to login. So fairly simple generic function we can use anywhere. And Express is really doing the checking for us with this built-in is authenticated method of the HTTP request. Keep in mind, this doesn't give us roles and permissions. This only tells us if somebody's logged in or not. So if we have different levels of users with different levels of permission, we're going to have to do additional checking around who can do what. This is just basic authentication. It's not authorization. The one other thing we should add to this, which we should add quickly, and then we'll take a break. Hang in there, Ryan. Is let's add a simple logout. This is just a few lines. So let's add a logout method and a button in the nav bar that we can sign somebody out. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll clean up the nav bar after the break. So this, I'm going to put my logout. All of our authentication methods are in the index controller, in controllers index.js. This is where we've got our register methods and login methods. We want to sign the user out. We're going to need to use passport to basically destroy the user's authentication. First thing I'll do is just make sure if there are any messages in the session variable, we'll just clear it out. We probably don't have any, but just in case we do. Then we just use passport and we call request.logout. So passport will destroy that user's session. We'll take them back to the login. We can just add a link quickly in our nav bar so that we can actually try the logout and make sure it works. So in our layout file, we can add a link. The href will be /logout. The text can say sign out or logout. Add an icon if you like. So I'll just add it for now. Log in. Code for the method backup in just a second. I'll make sure that it works. So I'm anonymous right now. I have no links. Now I'm authenticated. I can add, I can edit, I can delete. If I log out, takes me back here, and I'm anonymous once again. So again, here's the code for the method. Line 92 is optional. We don't really need it. It's just in case we've created any other session variables along the way for this user. If we did, we'll just make sure that we destroy them. I didn't yet. When we come back, we'll do it. Well, yeah, I added the link, but I didn't put in any condition. So when we come back, what we're going to do is we'll put some logic in here. First of all, we want to put register and login off to the right, and then we want to mimic the behavior we got from the ASP.NET template. That an anonymous user will see register and login, and an authenticated user will see their username and logout instead. We'll do that after. But I promised Ryan it would only be 5 more minutes. It's been 5 more minutes, and it sounds like we both need some caffeine. So we'll take a pause here. I will push what we've done so far, and I'm going to step out for a minute. Blair, when I come back, I'll try and have a look at your login. Okay? Let's take a quick break. Okay, I'm just pushing everything we've done.